After a frozen body turns up on a remote mountain road, Lieutenant Kenda makes a startling discovery.
You got a mother and an adult daughter, both reported missing by their respective husbands.
Well, now we know it's even more complicated than we thought.
To find out what happened, investigators will have to untangle an intricate web of family secrets.
Was she having an affair and her mother was covering for her?
He was always concerning to me during this entire investigation.
Well, that makes you a little more interesting than you were 5 minutes ago. As police officers, you discover and see many terrible things. There are some of those things that are so awful and so beyond the pale that they burn their image into your brain and you never forget.
It's a brisk February afternoon. Ronald and Tara Keller are making their way towards Kingston Circle, a remote area in Teller County, Colorado.
How much farther till we get there?
Should be close.
They wanted to go check out some property south of a little town called Divide. And it's high, it's way up in the mountains.
Wow. So beautiful up here.
Yeah, and deserted too. I haven't seen another car in over an hour.
And so they're going down this road.
That's weird.
And they saw a car. So they stopped and got out and approached the car.
Oh, I should have brought another coat.
And at that altitude, February is freezing.
Car looks abandoned, doesn't it?
Maybe they're up here checking out the land.
Wait, what's that?
Where?
That.
They thought they saw something that didn't look right. And then as they got closer still, it appeared to be a human.
Oh, geez, she's dead.
Oh, my God!
She appeared to have been there for several days.
Across the county line, El Paso District Attorney investigators Larry Martin and Mark Kors are relaxing after a long week of work.
Mark and I lived together probably no more than 5 or 6 months at the max, and it was a good living arrangement.
Got any plans tomorrow?
Thought maybe I'd take it easy, drink a few beers.
I had just started probably a month before this particular case as an investigator for the El Paso County DA's office.
Hey, you deserve it after the week we put you through.
Larry Martin was not only a good friend of mine, but Larry was also my mentor.
Hello, this is Martin. Really? Way up there?
Teller County reports that they have found the body of a deceased female off a mountain highway in the middle of nowhere.
Well, right away, it threw up a red flag. We could be looking at a homicide here.
Located just beyond Colorado's majestic Pikes Peak, it takes Martin and Kor over an hour to make it to the crime scene.
There's no gas stations, no businesses of any kind. There's no place to go and no reason to go there.
Hey, Larry.
Man, it's a cold one tonight.
You're telling me, and it's dark as hell up here.
Yeah, when I first arrived on scene, I was contacted by the undersheriff of the Teller County Sheriff's Department.
This is Mark Kors. He's new to our team.
Howdy.
Good to have you.
He tells them that they have found the body of a middle-aged white female face down on the ground 40 yards off of the highway.
Is that our victim's car?
Possibly. We're pulling a name off the plates right now to see who it belongs to.
And at that time, it was suspected that the car and the body were somehow connected.
The coroner's on his way up here, so we haven't touched anything yet.
All right, well, let's take a look at our Jane Doe.
So I was taken over and shown where the body had been found.
There she is.
Where's her coat?
Yeah, strange, huh? From our initial observance, there didn't appear to be any blood evidence visible, and there's no ID on her.
It just looked very suspicious that something occurred that caused this lady to go down.
Looks like she's been here at least a few days.
Yeah, rigor mortis has set in.
Rigor mortis, it passes relatively quickly, a day or two, but being it's wintertime, perhaps the body is frozen.
Hey, fellas. Hey, Doc.
The coroner arrives on scene and gets to work.
The nice thing about the cold weather is that it's like putting a body in a cooler. It can preserve the body, and so it's not as decomposed as it would be if it was laying in the heat.
He examined the body, and he too indicated that he found no other signs of trauma to the body.
So there's nothing obvious? Without an autopsy, I can't give you a cause of death.
Okay. Let's go see what else we can dig up.
Got it.
Thanks, Doc.
I wanted to look around the area to see, what evidence, if any, was there, but it was dark.
You could step off a cliff and fall 1,000 feet to your death and not realize it's happening until it's too late.
We gotta wait till morning. Let's go on ahead and tape off this whole area. We'll set up a team to come up at first light, see if we can find any physical evidence.
Copy that.
Thanks.
So what next?
Well, there's one thing we can look into.
Maybe that car can give us some idea about who this particular person is and what may have happened to her.
All the doors are locked, and no keys are found around the car or around this body that was discovered. So where are the keys for this car? No one knows.
But we were able to notice that there was a purse sitting on the front seat.
Excuse me, detectives. Got a hit on that plate.
The car registers to a Madeline Proctor, who is 54 years old.
Let's call in for a search warrant.
I'm on it.
We've got a lot of legal precautions because we still don't know exactly who the owner is and if they might actually be the suspect in the case.
Within the hour, investigators get the green light to search the vehicle.
That stinks.
Right away, we smell a distinct odor of stale alcohol.
And there are 4 empty wine cooler bottles on the back seat, and they're still got some little bit of liquid in the base.
There's no damage to the car, so they didn't crash land here.
And it's got a full tank of gas. So why did they pull over here? Well, let's use purse this is.
So the officers open the purse.
Think that's our Jane Doe?
They find a Colorado driver's license in the name of Madeline Proctor, the registered owner of the car.
It's definitely her. Her address is listed in Colorado Springs.
Why is this person on this remote mountain road 70 miles from home?
I think I know somebody who can help us with this.
It was obvious that we needed to call the Colorado Springs Police Department, ask for some assistance.
It's Kenda.
Hey, Joe, it's Larry. You got a minute?
Of course, what's going on?
I need you to run a name for me.
Sure, what's the name?
Madeline Proctor.
So I said, this is the lady we found on the side of the road.
All right, hang on a second. Let me see if I can find it in the database.
Larry and I have worked together and known each other for 30 years. We commonly worked murders together and separately. So in my computer, I determined that Madeline Proctor was listed as a missing person.
And I think I got a file on her. Hang on a second.
Sure, take your time.
I looked up the report, which I kept in my office.
Now, this is interesting. She's reported missing 5 days ago by her husband, Bob.
Really?
Wow.
What's that?
So I tell Larry, I said, there's another complication here. I see a connected report.
Madeline's daughter, Elizabeth Barnes, was reported missing by her husband 5 days ago as well. 26 years old, currently enrolled in the nursing program.
You got a mother and an adult daughter, both reported missing by their respective husbands 5 days prior to this body being found.
Well, that's odd. We didn't find a trace of her up here at the crime scene.
The first people that would be suspects in any missing persons case would be the husbands, or if it were the other way around, the wives. They're just statistically the most likely to have made that person missing. And so to have 2 of them filing missing persons reports on 2 separate people would be unusual. It would be peculiar, and you would want to determine if they had a relationship with motive to want to get rid of these 2 women, if they were friendly at all. I mean, perhaps they were not. Perhaps one was setting the other up. also a possibility.
Now we know it's even more complicated than we thought. Where is Elizabeth Barnes? We're investigating the death of 54-year-old Madeline Proctor in Teller County. I've discovered 2 missing persons reports that are connected, one involving Mrs. Proctor and the other involving her daughter, Elizabeth Barnes. We don't know where Elizabeth Barnes is or how they both came to be missing at the same time.
Well, once we find out that Bob Proctor, the husband of Madeline, had filed a missing person report, we need to go talk to him.
Ready? Sure.
Well, when we first contacted Bob,
hello,
we let him know that we were there in relation to the missing person report he filed.
Did you find her and Liz? Are they okay?
I think we should discuss this inside.
And you could see it in Bob's face.
Yeah, okay.
Which in some ways is good for him. No prior knowledge.
Oh, you can just move that stuff anywhere. I haven't been able to keep up on cleaning since Madeline disappeared.
It's okay.
He is distressed before we say a word.
So how long have you two been married?
See, we got divorced about 10 years ago, but we still live together. You guys must think that's a little weird, right?
Well, that makes you a little more interesting than you were 5 minutes ago.
I mean, I guess it just works for us.
I come from a family where my parents were divorced. They always remained friendly. We spent, even when there were other spouses involved, we spent most holidays together. And they very much co-parented. They had kids together, as this couple did. They had a daughter together. And so they just didn't have anger toward one another. It sounded like they'd maintained a friendship, and he was being nurturant toward her.
He said that after the divorce, Madeline actually joined the Peace Corps and went to Africa for several years.
I needed some help with the bills, so I got a roommate. She works a lot. She's never around much.
And what's her name?
Hannah Thompson. Anyway, things got complicated once Madeline got sick.
Bob says Mrs. Proctor contracted the disease malaria, which is very common in Africa, and she became extremely ill to the point of nearly dying.
So I bought her a plane ticket home and moved her into the spare bedroom.
He was not romantically involved with her, but he still cared about her, and he felt it was his obligation to take care of her in her time of need.
Can I get you another blanket?
No, I'm fine. This tea's perfect.
And how has that been, living together?
We got a pretty good thing going.
Hey, Dad.
Hey.
Hey, Mom. How you feeling? I'm still tired, but your dad's been taking great care of me. Good.
Madeline and Elizabeth, her daughter, were very close.
Liz, can I get you anything? Iced tea?
Oh, no, I'm good. Thank you.
And one of the benefits for Bob of having Madeline in his house was that it meant Elizabeth was around more.
He told us that she had gotten over the malaria and she would be moving back out of the house.
So, what can you tell me? Has anyone spoken with them?
It's been my experience, and Martin's experience as well. When you do this, don't beat around the bush. We're very sorry to inform you that your wife, Madeline Proctor, is no longer alive.
I'm very sorry.
And what about my Liz?
She's still missing.
He is devastated by this news. He was hopeful we were going to tell him she's fine. She's not fine.
I'm sorry. I need a minute.
Now take your time.
So it takes a while to recover that to some level of conversation. And sometimes it takes 30 minutes. Sometimes it takes an hour. Depends on the person.
So now here you're in the position of you've just given this guy some really bad news, 2 pieces of bad news. Now you have to interrogate him more or less, or at least do some initial questioning. And I'm sure that that doesn't feel good.
Once we calm him down to some degree,
I'm okay.
We start to talk with him about what happened the day of the disappearance.
I know this is difficult for you, but we just have a couple more questions. Can you walk us through what you remember from the day that they disappeared?
Liz came by to pick up her mother. Hey, sweetheart.
Hey.
What you doing here?
I'm just here to pick up Mom, so can't stay long. Mom, you ready? I just need 2 minutes.
Where are you headed?
Oh, just the library.
They said they were going to go to UCCS, which is the University of Colorado, and work on a project they were involved in the library.
See you later, Bob. Bye, Dad. Love you.
Okay, be safe.
I will.
So they took off together, theoretically, to do that.
And they never returned.
When Madeline didn't come home, I figured she just stayed at Liz's.
Then Bob says that the next morning, early, Mike Barnes, who is Elizabeth Barnes' husband, came barging in Bob's door in a panic.
And said, hey, she didn't come home.
Well, we called the police. You know, Liz's dog is missing, too.
Oh, yeah?
Badger. She loves that little guy. Takes him everywhere.
So now we have 2 women and a dog that are missing. This adds up to what? Well, kidnapping, assault, murder, who knows? All options are on the table.
Mike probably won't shed a tear over Madeline.
And he mentions that Mike Barnes, who is Elizabeth Barnes' husband, really dislikes Madeline because he believes his wife is too close to her and that closeness interferes with his marriage. When Bob says that, it raises an eyebrow. What if Mike decides that he's tired of Madeline and Madeline needs to go into the ground? That's an entirely reasonable possibility.
We found some wine coolers in their car.
What?
Did they like to drink together?
No way.
He said that we're both relatively straight and sober all the time, and he didn't have any reason to believe at all that they would be out drinking.
And Madeline's vision is so bad, she can't even drive. There's no way she could make it up there in the mountains alone.
So if anybody was driving that car, it would have been his daughter, Elizabeth.
Please, you have to find my Liz.
I promise you, we'll do everything we can to find her. Again, I'm very sorry.
At this particular point in the investigation, I think it's important that we go back to where Madeline was found and do a thorough search. Is Liz somewhere on that mountain?
We're gonna need some help out there. All right, I'll get a team together.
So I arranged for our canine units to respond to assist Teller County in a search for a second person, Elizabeth Barnes, to see if that person is in fact in that area. Canines are trained for a number of different functions. There are attack dogs, there are search dogs, some are cross-trained to both. But the olfactory sense of a dog is hundreds of times greater than that of a human. And our German Shepherds have a remarkable sense of smell. They're trained to be trackers. So we recover something that has that person's scent on it from their home, and the dog's memory kicks in, and he remembers that scent, and then see if the dog can detect that odor in the air or in the area on the ground.
In order to cover as much ground as possible, Martin directs the team to search in a grid pattern.
So it's very organized. It has to be. You can't just wander around and expect to find anything. You have to methodically search.
You got to picture this terrain that we're dealing with here. It's very heavily wooded.
Even in broad daylight, you can become disoriented in 5 minutes. So they've moved out about 100 yards from the car, and we're not finding anything.
There we go.
We start hearing a little yip.
This way. Hear that?
Doesn't smell very good either.
As we get closer, it's obvious there's a human body laying on the ground. And on the chest of this body is this little dog.
Looks like she's been here at least a few days.
Something was feeding on the face of the victim.
Man, that's awful.
Unbelievable.
Oh, God.
It is a horrifying vision, that many people have never seen, and they're very distressed by that. We may have found our missing daughter. We have recovered a dead body in Teller County, which turns out to be one Madeline Proctor. We're now present at the scene where we made a gruesome discovery, and we assume this is the missing daughter.
That must be Elizabeth Barnes. And her dog.
This was even hard to report on. She still had her little dog on its leash, on her wrist. It had begun to eat her.
Man, that's awful. I had never in my life seen anything like this before. I gotta go, guys.
It's quite disgusting, and it overwhelms some of the officers that are there that have never seen something like that.
In its defense, this dog had been stuck without a way to get off of this woman for several days.
What happens is the pet is licking the face, saying, hi, like, wake up. And then, you know, it kind of starts tasting good and they're hungry, right? And so it's a matter of survival.
You can't fault the dog for wanting to remain alive.
Hey, buddy. It's all right. We're just here to help.
Is her name on the collar?
Yep. Badger. Fitting.
It's remarkable that this dog was able to be there, barking and yapping the whole time, trying to draw attention to itself, and not be attacked and devoured by a coyote or a fox or some other similar animal, which is all over those mountains, including mountain lion, or a bear, for that matter, would come along and dine on both Badger and its owner. But it didn't happen.
We just know that this dog was very traumatized. We also knew that we, quickly as possible, had to remove this dog.
While we wait for the coroner, let's cut the leash and give the dog to the Humane Society.
Okay, and I noticed these over here, too.
There's footprints everywhere.
Well, that's a strange pattern.
Footprints can identify people just like fingerprints.
Is this scene going to tell us that she was running from somebody?
You want me to call in our crime lab?
Yeah, that'd be good.
So we're going to get the lab up here to do a proper crime scene search.
Later that day, the coroner updates the team.
In all honesty, there's not very much I can tell you at this point.
He examined the body, and he found no other signs of trauma to the body other than what was obvious to this body's face.
And said the damage was post-mortem, after death, carnivore involvement, i.e. the dog.
I did find this, though.
And he finds a driver's license in the pocket of the jacket of this woman, and it's Elizabeth Barnes.
You know how long she's been deceased?
I'd say probably 7 days or so.
That corresponds with the date they were both reported missing.
We'll have to wait for the autopsy to determine the cause of death.
All right, thank you.
Good luck.
After the victim's body is removed, CSPD's crime lab is given the green light to process the scene.
Now, they've got some pretty good equipment that they set up, and they take measurements, they take GPS locations so that later we can reconstruct the scene as we see it right at that particular moment.
What's that over there?
He sees something twinkle in the dirt and reaches down and determines they're a set of car keys. So if Liz Barnes had the keys to the car, why would she take them with her up into the hills? What if she was attacked and she was running for her life? At this point, anything is possible. So after they conduct that search of those footprints, they report to Martin.
Martin, team's finishing up right now, but we're pretty confident in our findings.
And what's that?
And they tell Martin that those are all belonging to Elizabeth Barnes. Every single print is hers.
She had fallen down several times. She was walking in multiple directions.
It was obvious that there was only one person up on that mountain. The footprints told them that this person appeared to be disorientated.
At some point in time, she was crossing over the same tracks over and over again.
Now, why would you do that?
So the mystery continues. How did Elizabeth Barnes die?
You need to talk to Mike Barnes.
He's still a viable suspect in this investigation. Did she initially run from her husband and then once got up in this particular area, couldn't find her way back out?
Let me know if you need anything. I'm gonna head back to the station.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks for coming down. Please, have a seat.
Okay. Mike was certainly somebody we wanted to pay attention to in case he might have some criminal involvement in this.
I heard about Madeline. Did you find my wife?
I'm sorry to have to tell you this.
She's dead?
We told him, yes, that we had found Liz and that we had found her deceased in the same general area as we had found Madeline.
Barnes's reaction is somewhat bizarre. He's nervous and fidgety, and his body language is odd.
I'm sorry, I just need a minute.
It's okay. Take your time.
Are you acting oddly just because you're odd, or are you acting that way because you killed her?
So, now what?
We just need to ask you a few questions.
Seriously?
We had to ask him about his relationship with his mother-in-law, Madeline. And we told him we had information that there was some bad blood between the two of them.
It's not that I didn't like her. She was just always around, putting a strain on our marriage.
Can you tell us where you were the day that she disappeared?
Yeah, I was at work. You can call them and check.
Do you mind?
Sure. Excuse me for a moment.
Mike was always concerning to me during this entire investigation because his demeanor was just not consistent with how I would expect a reasonable person to act.
Checks out.
Except for the fact that he had a clear alibi. We could verify through his employer that he had been at work.
I'd never wish any harm on Madeline. We just weren't close. And if I'm being honest, I always thought she was a bad influence on my wife.
Well, what do you mean by that?
It was very strange. I mean, the mom was 54 years old. The daughter was 26. That's not really your pattern for being a bad influence.
Like, for example, the last time I saw Liz, she was all dolled up. Wow. You look nice.
Thanks.
Thought you said you were going to school.
I am. I'm picking up Mom in like 20 minutes.
Mike says it was out of character for his wife to have her hair and makeup done on a general basis, but particularly because she was just saying she was going down to the school library with her mother.
What can you tell us about Liz's school schedule?
Michael said that he's well aware of her activities at school, and she had a mentor named Pete Gosher, who she spent a lot of time with in the library.
They usually met once a week throughout the semester. You don't think he might have had something to do with this, do you?
He said even though that he knew that she was going to the college with her mother, that he felt that she was probably going to meet up with Pete.
Was she having an affair and her mother was covering for her? There was another strange element to the whole thing.
You definitely want him to account for his whereabouts when they went missing. What was going on with him and her at that time?
So now we have a new name. Who is Pete Gosher, and what does he have to do with this disappearance and death of these two women? We don't know the answer to that, but we need to find out. We're investigating the mysterious deaths of 54-year-old Madeline Proctor and her daughter, 26-year-old Elizabeth Barnes. We have uncovered a new person of interest. His name is Pete Gosher that may have had an arrangement to meet with Elizabeth Barnes on the day she disappeared.
Well, now at this point, we want to go talk to people at the college. Did he meet with Liz, and if so, what was the conversation?
Hi.
I'm Detective Martin, and this is Detective Coors.
How can I help you?
So they asked her if she remembered seeing Elizabeth Barnes or Madeline Proctor on Friday the 18th.
No, I don't think so, but I mean, that was a while ago.
Do you have a sign-in sheet that I could see just to be sure?
Here it is.
Great, thank you.
Martin checked those sign-in logs for the date of disappearance and found nothing. So the likelihood is great that she was never there.
What about a Pete Gosher?
Oh, yeah. He's right there.
Sure, we'd love to talk to him, so we went over and introduced ourselves.
Excuse me, are you Pete?
Yeah. What can I help you with? Do you know Madeline Proctor and Liz Barnes? Well, sure, I know Liz.
He said, we're in the same class together, And we work together in the library on projects that are connected to that class. I would call us study buddies.
Fridays are our usual study days. But I feel like she's been blowing school off.
Why is that?
We were supposed to meet 2 weeks ago, and I hung around for an hour, but she never showed up.
And she never called him to tell him that she wasn't showing up, so he was a little put off by that.
Sorry to have to tell you this, but we found the bodies of Liz and her mother up in Teller County.
What? You mean Liz is dead?
I'm afraid so.
We need to know what kind of relationship you and Liz had. Excuse me?
He is generally shocked and insists that it was only a study relationship.
The Friday they disappeared, you were supposed to meet with her. Can you recall what you were doing that day?
Yeah. After the library, I went to a lecture.
And we were able to verify the fact that he was at that lecture. So he's ruled out as anybody involved in the disappearance of these two ladies.
With little to go on, Martin checks in with Kenda at the station.
We're going nowhere fast with this one.
So what do we know so far?
Well, we can eliminate the school, that's for sure.
What if they never planned to go to school that day? What if they lied to their family?
That's an interesting thought.
Let's take a look at the map.
What were they going to, and why are there wine coolers in that car?
Let's see. It's where their house is, right about there.
It's only a few miles from where they resided to the University of Colorado.
And they came up 24.
And yet when they're dead, they're 70 miles plus from where they live.
I think I know where they were headed.
My thought at that point is it's pretty obvious then that they were headed to Cripple Creek.
They probably missed the turn at Divide and got lost.
That would explain why they're all dressed up.
If you're looking for a place for entertainment when you go west out of Colorado Springs, Cripple Creek is going to be the best destination because of the casinos and the limited stakes gambling.
Maybe Liz and Madeline were trying to sneak away for a little bit of fun at the casino and never made it.
Could that be? Yes. Could they have met somebody in Cripple Creek and things went south? Yeah, they could have done that too.
It's Kenda.
I get a call and it's the coroner's office. He said the autopsy examinations are complete.
Good news. The coroner's determined to cause the death.
Great, let's go.
The ultimate question in this case, if someone murdered Madeline Proctor and her daughter, Elizabeth Barnes, how did they do that? By what means did they cause their death?
Hey, Doc.
Hey, detectives, thanks for coming down so quickly.
So what do we know?
Well, I have to say, this is a really strange case.
There was no outward signs of trauma to either body other than the dog eating part of the face of Liz.
So there's no bruising, there's no punctures, there's no hypodermic marks, there's no gunshot wounds, there's no stab wounds.
Well, something had to kill him.
And so we're left wondering what happened to these women. Sometimes the answer lies in the toxicology findings.
The tox screen came back with a mild level of alcohol, but more importantly, there's a high dose of something else in their system.
Really?
What could that be? Are we dealing with two people who were drugged?
Have you heard of the new medication Zoloft?
Zoloft is an antidepressant known as a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. And in 1994, this is still a pretty new medication.
Doctors are starting to prescribe it to help combat depression.
And physicians didn't know as much as we know now about the medication.
So could they have overdosed on it?
Based on the tox screen, I don't think so, but it could have altered their mindset.
For these women to combine it with alcohol and then to go up into the mountains and have the change of elevation can really cause some concerning side effects.
Even the coroner says that that would likely cause disorientation and confusion.
Well, how'd they get their hands on it?
Our investigation showed that there was no Zoloft prescribed to either of the two of them, so then we became concerned about where did it come from.
Could it be in the Proctor home?
Police return to the house and find ex-husband Bob Proctor and roommate Hannah Thompson home. Both give permission to search the property.
It's all about the reasonableness of your search, particularly under consent. You don't want to destroy somebody's home. You want to be very careful.
Bingo.
And lo and behold, prescription bottles.
Hannah Thompson.
But these antidepressants were prescribed to Bob's roommate.
The discovery of that bottle with her name on it, Hannah Thompson, makes her a potential player in this event.
What can you tell us about the night that they disappeared?
Well, I remember talking to Madeline briefly, and she seemed like she was in a good mood. And she looked really nice.
And she also said that she was wearing makeup, had her hair done, and was nicely dressed. But Hannah didn't think anything of that and just said it seemed quite normal to me. So now we're back to this point where now Martin is talking to her with one eyebrow raised.
What can you tell us about these?
So when Martin produces this bottle of antidepressant, Hannah's face drops.
Where did you get this?
From your medicine cabinet.
She admitted that she'd been having some problems with depression and had gone to the doctor to prescribe these for her.
Have you ever given any pills to Liz or Madeline?
No, of course not, but...
Hannah says, you know, I've noticed for some time now that there are some pills missing from these bottles.
I suspected Madeline had been stealing my pills.
Why would Madeline Proctor steal these drugs, and why would she give them to her daughter?
We'll never have that answer. But taking those medications on top of drinking those wine coolers and driving up to the mountains apparently caused a problem with both of them.
Later that week, the coroner makes his final ruling on the case.
Well, there you have it.
The ruling of the death was accidental.
You're kidding.
Primary cause, exposure. Secondary cause, hypothermia.
You know, working a case like this, you want to come to a conclusion. We'll never have all the answers that we want, and that's sad.
While no one will ever know what really happened to Madeline and her daughter Elizabeth, Kenda and Martin have a theory.
It's obvious that the two ladies had a plan that evening. They were going to go out,
See you later, Bob.
have some fun.
Okay, be safe.
I will.
They are lying about where they're going and lying about what they're going to do.
I can't believe they bought it. Right, Badger?
And for whatever reason, through habit, through oversight, Badger came along.
Yeah, the dog thing is really a question. But, like, why, if you were going out someplace and you were dressed up in the winter, would you bring your dog? On the other hand, you know, maybe she did the Paris Hilton thing and she just, like, kept the dog in her purse. Who knows? But you wouldn't want to leave it in the car for several hours because it would be freezing. So why was the dog there at all?
Viva Cripple Creek.
This probably wasn't the first time they've gone out without telling anyone.
This is delicious.
I got something else for you, too.
Ooh, what is it?
Just a little something to take the edge off. Here.
Madeline, at some point, introduces the antidepressants to her daughter. What is her motivation? The only one who knows is Madeline, and she can't tell us.
I cannot wait to hit the craps table tonight.
If I win big, I can get my own apartment. I'm so tired of having roommates.
And then I can visit you all the time.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
The elevation approaching Cripple Creek is in excess of 9,000 feet above sea level. Alcohol impact increases with altitude.
Do you know where you're going?
Mind your own damn business.
Then mix in some antidepressants, and we have two very confused and very disoriented women.
Maybe we should pull over and check the map.
I said I know where I'm going.
I think easily there could have been an argument in the car. God knows it's not that unusual for parents and children to have fights over how the child is driving.
Would you shut up? Mom, can you just stop? He probably has to go to the bathroom or something.
For whatever reason, they consciously stop the car.
Why are you pulling over here?
There's nothing for miles. Where else am I supposed to pull over?
Okay, okay. Just be careful. Watch out for wild animals.
Yeah, okay, Mom.
It was obvious to us that Liz was probably the first one to leave the car. She gets out of the car, she's still got the car keys with her, and she's got her dog with her.
Let's go. Ooh.
And when her daughter doesn't return, Madeline starts to panic.
Liz!
At some point, she gets out of the car.
Liz! Where are you? Elizabeth! Dang it!
When Madeline got out of the car, the door locked behind her, and she had no way to get back in because her daughter had the keys.
And so then she's out in very cold weather and probably in a panic state herself, wondering where her daughter is.
Mom!
Meanwhile, Elizabeth has no idea how to get back to the car and her mother.
She crosses her tracks several times.
It's okay, Badger. I think we just took a wrong turn somewhere.
She gets disoriented. She doesn't know where she is. She doesn't know where she came from.
Mom! We'll find her.
Trying to figure out where to go. And she can't do that until she literally runs out of gas.
Sorry, Badger. Mama just needs a little break.
Elizabeth!
Mom is still at the car, but now she's stuck. She can't get back in the car. She's in the middle of nowhere in the mountains in Colorado. Well below freezing weather up there.
Elizabeth!
Tragically, mother and daughter are only 100 yards apart. And it's not long before hypothermia begins to set in.
The altitude is very exhausting, particularly when they're under the influence of something.
And when you're suffering from hypothermia, you can lay on the ground and just go to sleep, and you're never going to wake up again. And that's probably what happened to both of these ladies.
The daughter was in nurses training. The mom had been in the Peace Corps, and to lose them to a bizarre situation like this seems like really kind of a loss for everybody.
The desert remembers everything, even when the people who live on its edge try to forget. On a cold November night in 1998, under a moon so thin it could barely carve shadows across the sand, a scream was reported somewhere between the old state highway and an abandoned gas station that hadn't pumped fuel since the late 70s. No one could say for sure who heard it first, or whether it was even real. But by the next morning, a body lay in the dust, like a question the entire town refused to answer. The case was labeled a tragedy, then an anomaly, and finally, when the weeks turned into years, a cold case that hardened into local folklore. Now, decades later, a DNA twist has turned the old files inside out, dragging everyone back to the moment the desert swallowed the truth whole. Her name was Alicia Warren, 24, a part-time waitress at a roadside diner and a part-time student at a community college 40 miles west. She wasn't famous, wasn't connected to anyone powerful, wasn't involved in anything illicit. She was, by every measure, ordinary. Yet the way she vanished felt extraordinary, almost theatrical, as if the desert had chosen her specifically. That night, she locked up the diner at 10:04 p.m., waved at the cook, and walked toward her car with the usual tired slump of someone balancing 2 jobs and an unfinished degree. She should have arrived home before 11. She never made it past mile marker 72. When deputies found her car abandoned on the shoulder, driver's door slightly ajar, headlights still weakly glowing, they thought it was a breakdown, maybe a flat tire, maybe a call for help that never connected. But the engine worked. The tires were intact. Her purse was on the passenger seat. The keys dangled from the ignition like a frozen moment. And then they found the drag marks. Faint, messy, smudged into the dirt, as if someone had tried to cover them, or as if the wind had done the job by accident. 100 feet away, her body lay curled beside an outcropping of rock, arms bent inwards, hair scattered as if arranged by a careless hand. No footprints, no tire tracks, no signs of a struggle except the ugly bruising on her neck. The investigation unfolded fast at first, like every small-town manhunt that briefly convinces people a monster is in their midst. Deputies swept the desert with flashlights and dogs. Helicopters chopped the cold air. Volunteers lined up with thermal blankets wrapped around themselves, ready to chase any lead. But the desert gave them nothing. Everything was smooth, erased, clean. The only concrete detail came from the coroner. Alicia had been strangled, likely by someone she knew, and it had happened quickly. No defensive wounds, no hesitation. Almost intimate. Detectives clung to that word, intimate, like it meant something solid. They questioned her boyfriend, her co-workers, the handful of classmates she rarely spoke to. They dug through her schedule, her journals, her voicemail. Nothing pointed anywhere except back into the empty highway and the yawning dark. Even the scream, if it was real, failed to anchor itself to any witness willing to swear by it. A week later, the sheriff gave the first press conference. He stood in front of the courthouse, jaw tight, eyes half-shadowed by the brim of his hat, and said the investigation was active and ongoing, a phrase everyone recognized as a warning that leads were evaporating. By the third week, the newspapers ran headlines like "Local Mystery Deepens" and "Highway Horror Remains Unsolved." By the third month, the story had shrunk to the inside pages, and by the second year, you had to dig into old archives just to remember her name. But the people who lived closest to mile marker 72 didn't forget. They talked about the car, the scream, the body in the dust. They talked about the strange lights that some swore they saw on the highway that same night, the flashes that looked like high beams wobbling across the dark, even though no engine sound followed. They talked about the silent stretch of road that seemed to grow colder after 1998, as if the desert itself held on to something it didn't want to release. Some locals claimed they heard footsteps near their windows on windless nights. Others said they found strange indentations around their property line, like someone had been pacing and thinking. None of it was ever reported to the sheriff, but everyone whispered it. For 2 decades the case sat unmoving, a folder gathering dust in a locked cabinet inside the sheriff's building, labeled Warren, Alicia, Homicide. Deputies came and went. Sheriffs retired. Evidence was checked, rechecked, photographed, digitized, and forgotten. The only constant was the desert, stretching itself out year after year, unbothered, unburdened. Then in 2023, something shifted. It started with a routine statewide audit of cold cases. An outside agency requested that every county resubmit biological samples for digital cataloging. Most cases received nothing more than a quick barcode scan and a standard entry into an updated system. But Alicia's case triggered a small red flag. The original DNA extraction from under her fingernails, an insignificant trace dismissed in 1998 as contamination, had never been uploaded to any national database. Protocol back then was laxer. The technology was primitive. What looked like contamination in 1998 was now reanalyzed with modern precision. The lab technician reported the hit on a Tuesday morning. A partial match. Not a suspect, not a name, but a genealogical thread leading to a family that lived 2 counties south. A family no one had ever questioned. A family with no known connection to Alicia. The kind of twist that makes investigators sit up straighter. But that revelation belongs to later chapters. Before the DNA twist shook the investigation awake, The details of Alicia's final hours had remained nothing but static. To understand why the match mattered, investigators needed to revisit everything: the diner, the drive, the strange silence on the highway. Inside the diner, the staff remembered the night too well. It was slow, unusually slow, the kind of shift where the hum of the refrigerator fills the silence, because no one is talking. Alicia had been quiet, focused on wiping down tables long after they were already clean. A trucker, one of the last customers, told deputies that she kept glancing at the clock as if expecting someone, though she denied it when asked. The cook said she left in a hurry, faster than usual, and didn't stop to grab the leftover pie she usually took home. Her final movements were captured on a grainy security camera outside the diner. She walked to her car. She unlocked the door. She paused just for a moment, turning her head toward something off-camera. Something or someone she seemed to recognize. Then she got inside, started the engine, and drove off. Deputies replayed that footage hundreds of times. They zoomed, they enhanced, they added filters. But nothing revealed the mystery of that single glance. And out on the highway, where the moonlight fractured across long stretches of asphalt, everything that might have explained her final minutes had been wiped clean. There was the matter of the drag marks, the bruising, the lack of struggle. The sheriff at the time believed she had trusted whoever approached her. Maybe she accepted help. Maybe she stepped out of the car willingly. Maybe the final moments were too fast, too abrupt, for her to fight back. But in the absence of evidence, every theory hardened into speculation. Residents offered rumors. A drifter passing through, a jealous lover, a truck driver with a record, a cult rumored to meet near the canyon, a reclusive rancher with a violent history. All investigated, all cleared. The case calcified. Through all this, one piece of evidence never made sense. A single strand of hair found tangled in the fabric of her jacket. Not her color, not her texture. The forensic team back then concluded it was transferred randomly, maybe from the diner, maybe from a co-worker, maybe from a classmate. Without DNA testing priorities or advanced analysis, the hair was catalogued and ignored. That strand is what changed everything in 2023, because when it was retested, its genetic markers pointed in a direction no one had predicted. Not toward a stranger, not toward someone random, but toward a lineage tied to a man who had died in 2005, whose siblings, cousins, and extended family still lived quietly across 2 counties. A man with no criminal record, no known interaction with Alicia, no reason to cross her path. And yet his DNA was on her jacket. Investigators didn't release this detail publicly. They didn't issue statements or update the press. Instead, they reopened the file in absolute silence and began tracing a family tree that stretched back decades, through marriages, relocations, sealed birth certificates, and old adoption records. The more they mapped, the stranger it became. The family's movements aligned with old unsolved reports, missing persons, unexplained incidents, roadside encounters dismissed years earlier. The cold case was no longer cold, but before the twist could fully take shape, detectives needed one more thing: a reason, a connection, a motive. Something that tied Alicia Warren to a man she had never met. The desert, of course, stayed quiet, but the file, once cracked open, began whispering clues that had been overlooked. The time of death, the position of her body, the faint traces of old engine oil on her jacket, not from her own car, but from something older, heavier. A classic vehicle, possibly. Something that didn't match any suspects questioned in 1998. That detail, more than anything else, pushed investigators to look again at the camera footage from the diner. That subtle turn of her head. That moment of recognition. Not fear. Recognition. Someone she knew, or thought she knew. Someone who stepped out of an old vehicle under a starless sky and said something soft enough that she left the safety of her car and walked toward the desert. The the one that would haunt the next 11 parts of this story, lingered heavy. Who was she meeting? And why did the desert keep their secret for 25 years? The desert is patient, but investigators are not. Once the DNA results surfaced in 2023, the reopening of the Warren case moved quietly, like a tremor running beneath the surface before anyone feels the quake. The sheriff's office didn't announce anything, didn't whisper a hint to journalists, didn't even log the renewed activity into the outdated public database. The file was simply pulled from its resting place, placed on a table under harsh fluorescent lights, and treated as if the clock had never stopped ticking. It was as though time folded in on itself, pulling everyone back to the night Alicia Warren disappeared along that lonely stretch of Nevada highway. Detective Mara Holt became the first to dive back into the evidence. She wasn't even in elementary school when Alicia died, but she carried a reputation for unearthing details that others glossed over, the kind that hide behind assumptions and false certainties. She studied the hair sample, the roadside photographs, the autopsy report, and the diner footage with a surgeon's steadiness. What caught her attention wasn't just the DNA match, it was the subtle contradiction between Alicia's behavior on camera and the brutality of her death. People don't look calm when they see danger. They don't pause and soften their posture. They don't tilt their head as if listening to a familiar voice. Something about Alicia's final recorded moment suggested trust, but trust in whom? The genealogical link from the DNA pointed to a family named Callahan. Not a notorious name, not infamous, not tangled in criminal records or violent histories. They lived in scattered pockets across 2 counties, mostly modest homes, mostly quiet lives. The man whose DNA partially matched, Daniel Callahan, had died of a stroke in 2005, long before the technology existed to tie him to anything suspicious. He had no documented connection to Alicia, no evidence placing him near the diner, no recorded presence near mile marker 72 in 1998. Yet the hair found on her jacket, preserved in a thin plastic vial for 25 years, carried his genetic echo. Detective Holt visited the Callahan family home first, a weathered single-story house sitting on the edge of a dry field where rusted machinery slept beneath layers of dust. Daniel's younger brother, Raymond, answered the door. He was in his 70s, thin, stooped, with a stare that felt both hollow and too aware. He listened politely as Holt explained the renewed investigation, nodding slowly as if each word required effort to absorb. When she mentioned the forensic match, he didn't flinch. He just raised his eyes toward the sagging porch roof and whispered something like a quiet apology to the wind. Inside, the house smelled like old wood and cigarettes, the kind of scent that clings to everything long after habits die. Photographs littered the walls, weddings, holiday gatherings, a young Daniel standing beside an old truck, a woman whose face had faded in the sun. Detective Holt scanned each image, taking in the subtle details. Daniel's posture, the shape of his jaw, the hairline that matched the DNA profile in the lab report. She asked about him, about where he worked, where he traveled, the kind of man he had been. Raymond answered carefully, words chosen like stones placed one at a time. Daniel kept to himself, he said, voice trembling slightly. Liked old cars. Spent evenings fixing engines from the 60s. Didn't bother nobody. Didn't cause trouble. Did he ever go near Highway 72? Holt asked. Raymond hesitated, then nodded. Sometimes. He liked the silence out there. Drove to clear his head. A chill moved through the room, the kind that isn't caused by temperature, but by proximity to a truth no one wants to reach for. When Holt left the Callahan home, she carried more questions than answers. The desert wind tore across the field, lifting bits of dry grass into spirals, as if stirring up memories long buried. Something about Raymond's quiet resignation gnawed at her. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't fear. It was something older, something like acceptance, as if he knew this day would come. Back at the department, Holt began reconstructing Daniel Callahan's final decade of life. She dug through old employment records, insurance files, archived vehicle registrations. That was when she found it, a record of a 1967 black Pontiac Firebird, registered to him until 2002. The same year the car disappeared from renewal logs. The same make and model known for leaking a specific type of engine oil, the same oil found on Alicia's jacket. Suddenly the old diner footage took on new meaning. That slight turn of Alicia's head, that moment of recognition, something familiar pulling her attention. A sound, perhaps. A voice. Or more likely, an engine. A distinctive growl from a car built long before she was born, yet unmistakable in the quiet of a near-empty desert night. Investigators retrieved a list of vintage car owners from the late 1990s. It wasn't long. Most had moved, sold their vehicles, or passed away. A few remained, but none crossed paths with Alicia. None except Callahan. Still, even that connection was thin. Too thin to explain the way she stepped into the night without hesitation. Too thin to justify the violence that ended her life. Detective Holt began mapping every known detail from 1998 onto a digital timeline, building a minute-by-minute reconstruction. She studied weather reports, traffic logs, repair shop records. She tracked down former co-workers at the diner. One, a waitress named Michelle, now living 2 states away, remembered a strange detail. A man who used to sit at the counter, always during Alicia's shift, never ordering more than a cup of coffee. He stopped coming in around late October, 2 weeks before Alicia died. Michelle described him as quiet, older than most regulars, with a stare that felt heavy, as though he was searching for something in her face. She never caught his name, but she remembered the car he arrived in. A dark, older model, loud enough to rattle the windows when he pulled out of the parking lot. Detective Holt didn't need to ask for clarification. She already knew. The more she followed the old patterns, the more the case twisted itself into contradictions. Why would a man like Daniel, no record, no history of violence, no ties to the victim, suddenly turn predatory? Why stalk a woman he barely knew? Why leave almost no evidence behind except a single hair? And why, after the incident, drift back into obscurity for 7 years before dying quietly at home? Unless, Holt reasoned, the answer wasn't Daniel at all. The genealogical report stated only that the DNA was a partial match, not a direct one. Not Daniel himself, but someone from his lineage, a cousin, an uncle, or possibly a son. Holt revisited the family records, poring through birth certificates and adoption papers. She checked hospital registries for the surrounding counties. She examined every Callahan relative of Daniel's generation and every possible descendant. That was when she found a sealed document from 1975 connected to an unnamed male infant born at a Reno clinic. The adoption required anonymity, a stipulation by the mother, who declined to list the father on the paperwork. But the maternal surname, Callahan, tied the child unmistakably to Daniel's family tree. The father's identity remained blank, but the approximated birth year meant one thing. By 1998, the child would have been 23, roughly Alicia's age. Someone who might blend in. Someone with no criminal record because there was nothing official to link him anywhere. Someone who could move freely. Someone who grew up on the periphery of a fractured family, drifting between homes, invisible to the system. A ghost with a name buried in sealed documents. Detective Holt pressed further, tracking the adoption trail to a small rural town where the infant had been placed with a foster family for several years. But the paper trail cut off abruptly when the boy turned 8. No school records, no medical records, no forwarding address. As if someone had retrieved him and vanished. Meanwhile, a new witness surfaced. A retired highway patrol officer named Leonard Price contacted the sheriff's office after hearing news about statewide DNA audits. He claimed he remembered something odd from November 1998. An old black Firebird pulled over on a service road near mile marker 72. The driver, he recalled, seemed nervous, kept avoiding eye contact, and had no registration papers on hand. Price let him go with a warning, considering it a minor traffic violation. But the detail that stood out, the thing he had never mentioned, wasn't the driver. It was the passenger seat. Something on it. A jacket, small, light-colored, the kind a young woman might wear on a cold night. Price hadn't connected it back then. No one had told him about Alicia's case until days later. And by then, the detail felt too flimsy to report. Just a hunch. Just a memory. But now it aligned perfectly. A vanished adoptee. A genealogical link. A car that matched the forensic residue. A jacket on the passenger seat. Detective Holt began to feel the shape of the story forming, like a figure emerging from the haze of the desert heat. Something deliberate. Something practiced. Something that did not start with Alicia, and did not end with her. Because as she dug deeper into the sealed records, a chilling pattern emerged. The towns where the Callahan adoptee had briefly appeared. Each one was haunted by an unresolved disappearance. A girl missing in 1989, another in 1992, another in 1996. No bodies, no suspects, no headlines beyond small-town whispers. And the deserts around those towns? As empty and hungry as the one that held Alicia. For the first time in 25 years, investigators could feel the shape of a predator moving through the dark, slipping between towns, slipping between years, leaving almost nothing behind except silence. The cold case was no longer a story about one girl. It was the beginning of a pattern the desert had buried, a pattern ready to surface. The deeper Detective Holt dug, the more the years seemed to fold inward, shrinking the distance between past and present until the events of 1998 no longer felt like history, but like something breathing beneath her feet. The adoption records, the missing girls, the forgotten towns swallowed by silence. It all formed a constellation of shadows that pointed in one direction. Someone had moved through Nevada like a ghost, never staying long enough to be seen, never leaving enough behind to be followed. Someone whose life existed in the margins, between paperwork and memory, between names and identities. Someone whose existence had been erased deliberately, perhaps violently. Late one night, sitting alone in the evidence room surrounded by yellowed case files, Holt realized she had been asking the wrong question. It was never simply who killed Alicia Warren. The question was how many others had come before her. And more importantly, why had no one noticed? To answer that, she needed to go back to the beginning. Not 1998, not the diner, not the desert. She needed to return to the sealed adoption from 1975. The mother listed on the file, Evelyn Callahan, had been only 16 when she signed over parental rights. Everything about her life appeared blurry, incomplete. No consistent address, no school records for 2 consecutive years, no medical documentation except for the birth itself. Holt located a surviving relative, Evelyn's older sister Nora, now living in a nursing facility on the outskirts of Reno. Nora's memory came in waves, drifting in and out like flickering static. But one clarity emerged. Evelyn had run away from home for nearly a year before giving birth. When she returned, she refused to say where she had been or who the father was. She left again shortly after the adoption and was found dead less than a year later, an overdose ruled accidental. But Holt knew too much now to believe in coincidences. She pressed gently, asking about Evelyn's disappearance, whether she had mentioned anyone, anywhere. Nora hesitated, eyes clouding, then whispered something strange. Something that struck Holt like a blade sliding into place. Evelyn had once mentioned a man who drives the desert roads, a man who talks softly like he's borrowing your breath. Someone she described as both kind and terrifying, someone who offered shelter when she had none, yet whose presence made her feel unreal, as if floating outside herself. Nora didn't remember his name, or perhaps she never knew it. Descriptions like that don't belong to ordinary men. When Holt left the facility, the sun was sinking behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the pavement like fingers reaching for answers buried too deep. She sat in her car for a long time, letting the implications seep into her bones. If the biological father of the 1975 adoptee was the same man described by Evelyn, mysterious, predatory, operating in isolation along remote roads, then the genealogical connection to Daniel Callahan was misleading. Perhaps the hair found on Alicia didn't belong to Daniel or any known relative. Perhaps it belonged to someone whose DNA echoed Callahan blood only faintly, someone who existed off-record, someone whose presence never touched public systems, someone who knew how to disappear. That possibility shifted everything. Back at the sheriff's office, Holt began reconstructing the adoptee's life with a new intensity. She created a sprawling map on the wall, marking all known foster homes, every county where he might have been placed, every school district he might have briefly attended. She added pins for the missing girls, 1989, 1992, 1996, and drew thin red threads connecting dates, locations, witness statements. At first, the lines seemed chaotic, random. But slowly, a pattern emerged. An arc through the desert, looping south, curving west, crossing the timeline in a rhythm too deliberate to ignore. Then she noticed something that made her heart pound. Each disappearance occurred within 20 miles of a known auto salvage yard, the kind that specialized in abandoned classics, the kind that attracted drifters with a knack for rebuilding old engines, the kind someone like Daniel Callahan, quiet, solitary, enamored with vintage vehicles, would have frequented. If Daniel had met the adoptee, or unknowingly influenced him, or even taught him mechanical skills, the connection to Alicia might not have been coincidence. It might have been the final link in a chain stretching back decades. Holt filed the thought away, not because she doubted it, but because she needed harder proof. She turned to the Firebird, the 1967 black Pontiac registered to Daniel until 2002. She tracked down its last recorded location, an old scrap lot in Elko County, long since abandoned. Holt and 2 deputies drove out at dawn. The salvage yard looked like a graveyard for machines, steel husks half swallowed by sand, windshields shattered, doors hanging open like broken jaws. They spent hours searching until one deputy called out from behind a collapsed shed. Lying half-buried in a bed of sand was a rusted frame with the faint outline of a phoenix fire emblem. The Firebird. Its interior was stripped, its engine gutted, its plates missing, but Holt felt the weight of it the moment she stepped closer. A presence, a history, a vessel of stories too grim to recount. Inside the trunk, wedged between layers of decayed carpet and rusted metal, Holt found a fragment of cloth. Light blue, faded, thin. She bagged it without comment, though she already recognized the material. The diner staff had confirmed Alicia wore a pale blue cardigan that night. Her body had been found without it. The desert, after 25 years, had given up its first physical secret. Holt's pulse hammered as she sent the sample to the lab. She didn't dare imagine what the analysis would reveal, but while waiting, she kept moving, pursuing another lead. The retired highway patrol officer, Leonard Price. She met him in his small, cluttered home, where faded certificates hung crookedly on the walls and old radios filled the shelves. He repeated his memory with surprising clarity. The Firebird pulled over at 11:17 p.m., just miles from where Alicia's body was discovered. Then Price said something he hadn't shared on the phone. The driver wasn't alone, he murmured. There was something off. His eyes. Like he wasn't looking at me. More like he was looking through me. Can you describe him? Holt asked. Price shook his head slowly. No. His face, blurred in my mind. Not like I forgot. More like I never really saw it in the first place. A strange unease prickled down Holt's spine. She had heard victims describe trauma with similar language, but Price wasn't a victim. Or was he? Something about that encounter had disturbed him enough for the memory to warp over time. She asked if he remembered anything else. He hesitated, then lifted a trembling hand and pointed to a stack of old patrol logs. "I recorded his plate number," he whispered. "I didn't turn it in. I don't know why. Something told me not to." The log showed a plate, one that matched Daniel Callahan's Firebird. But beside it, Price had scribbled something odd in the margin. "Not him?" Two words that raised more questions than answers. Back at the office, the lab results came in. The cloth fragment from the Firebird trunk was indeed Alicia's cardigan, but buried deeper in the report was a shock that made Holt sit down hard. 2 DNA profiles were found. One Alicia's, one unknown. Not Daniel's. Not the adoptee's probable profile. Not anyone in the national system. Entirely unfamiliar. This wasn't a genealogical match. This was someone outside the family line, a stranger, a predator who had interacted with Alicia within hours of her death and left no trace except a microscopic signature sealed inside her clothing for 25 years. Holt felt the case shift again, expanding into something more elusive. If the unknown profile belonged to the desert drifter Evelyn had feared, the one who fathered the adoptee, then this man had moved through Nevada for decades, leaving only shadows and broken lives behind. A man who preferred isolation, who forged identities through silence, who left victims without explanation, who abandoned cars like shed skin. A man who didn't exist anywhere except in the spaces between official records. A man now tied directly to Alicia. Holt looked at the timeline. The missing girls, the foster homes, the salvage yards, the towns steeped in rumors of vanishing women. The unknown DNA had been there, hidden in the cold, waiting for technology to catch up, waiting for someone to pull on the right thread. This wasn't just a cold case anymore. It was the unraveling of a mythic predator, a presence stitched into decades of desert folklore, the kind locals describe in whispers but never confront. As Holt stared at the evidence wall, she felt it, the sense that something enormous was about to break open, something that would shake not only the Warren case, but the entire history of unsolved disappearances across the Nevada desert. And for the first time since reopening the file, she whispered the question out loud, the question that hung over every missing girl, every salvage yard, every forgotten road. "Is he still out there?" The unknown DNA was the kind of revelation that should have slowed the investigation, but instead it accelerated everything, snapping the desert awake like a whip crack in the night. Detective Holt felt the pressure closing in, not from superiors, not from the public, because no one else knew yet, but from the sense that the story she was uncovering was larger, darker, and more calculated than anyone had ever imagined. The cold case no longer felt like a single point in time. It had become a corridor stretching backward into decades of silence and forward into a future that still felt haunted. Holt wasn't chasing a suspect. She was chasing a presence. Her first step was obvious. If the unknown DNA wasn't tied to the adoptee or Daniel Callahan or anyone documented, then she needed to identify every person who had ever moved through the Callahan orbit. Friends, drifters, co-workers, strangers who passed through their salvage yards, anyone who could have left a trace years before Alicia died. She returned to the Callahan family home, catching Raymond smoking on the porch, the cigarette trembling in his fingers as if reacting to something only he could feel. He didn't look surprised to see her. Maybe because he knew she would return. Maybe because whatever secret haunted that family had been waiting to surface long before she arrived. "I need to ask again," Holt said, voice firm but not aggressive, scanning the dim interior behind him. "Did your brother ever mention someone unusual? A friend? A co-worker? Someone who spent time around him? Maybe someone who wasn't part of the family?" Raymond exhaled smoke slowly, the thin stream drifting upward like a confession rising into the dusk. "There was a man," he said finally. "Not a friend. More like a shadow. Came around when we were boys. Then again, years later. No name. Never spoke much. Watched more than he talked." Holt felt her pulse spike. "What did he look like?" Raymond shook his head. "That's the thing I can't shake. Every time I try to picture him, it's like the memory slides away, like looking at a reflection on water." Holt didn't interrupt. Some memories needed their own rhythm. "He had this way of appearing when you didn't expect him," Raymond continued. "Sometimes my father acted nervous around him. Other times he acted like he owed him something." "Did he ever speak to Daniel?" Holt asked. "Oh, yes." Raymond's voice dropped. "Daniel used to follow him around like a strayed dog. Watched him fix cars. Watched him work with metal. Watched him move through the desert like he belonged to it." Holt leaned forward, her breath catching. "Do you remember his car?" Raymond froze, cigarette halfway to his lips. His eyes widened just a fraction. "An old one. Black. Loud. Didn't run right unless he touched it, like it listened to him." A cold shiver ran through Holt. She already knew the answer. "A Pontiac?" She pressed. Raymond nodded slowly. "Firebird. 67, I think." Holt's heart clenched. The implication was unmistakable. The Firebird didn't start with Daniel. It belonged to someone before him. Someone Daniel had copied, imitated, or inherited something from. Not just a car, but a way of moving through the world. A silence. A method. A presence. "Do you know what happened to this man?" she asked. Raymond looked past her, into the desert. "People like him don't disappear," he whispered. "They just wait." The conversation left Holt rattled, but she didn't have time to dwell on dread. Late that night, she dug into the Firebird's pre-1980s registration history. Most old paper logs had been digitized poorly, leaving gaps, smudges, missing names. But after cross-referencing address blocks, storage liens, and salvage yard manifests, a single name emerged: Caleb Rusk. There was almost nothing on him. No social security number, no birth record, a single traffic citation from 1979. And then, silence. But the address listed on the citation led to a remote property deep in the high desert, now abandoned. Holt didn't wake any deputies. She didn't call backup. Something about the case had formed into an instinctual need to follow its path alone, as if involving others might scare the truth back into hiding. She drove through the desert under a moon sliding behind thin clouds, the road stretching endlessly into pale emptiness. The property lay 20 miles off any marked highway, accessed by a dirt track barely wide enough for a single vehicle. Old fence posts leaned like brittle bones. The structure ahead looked like a cabin crossed with a machine shop. Half wood, half corrugated metal, roof sagging, windows smashed. Holt approached with her flashlight sweeping cautiously. Every creak of shifting sand, every whisper of wind through cracked boards felt amplified. Inside the cabin smelled of oil and dust and something else, something metallic, faint, almost sour. Tools hung on the walls, neatly arranged despite the decay. A workbench stood in the center, covered in old bolts, rusted engine parts, scraps of wiring. But what drew Holt's eye was the far corner, a wooden trunk, massive, locked with 2 metal latches. She knelt, pried it open with a crowbar she found near the door. The lid groaned upward. Inside lay a collection of objects that made her breath stop. Bracelets, keychains, hair ties, ticket stubs, patches of fabric, faded photos of young women clipped from newspapers. Trophies, keepsakes, evidence of lives stolen. She reached deeper and found something newer, something not yet bleached by time. A student ID card belonging to a girl reported missing in 1990, then another from 1989. And beneath them, the oldest object of all, a photograph of a woman barely 17, smiling at the camera with shy uncertainty. On the back, written in faded ink, Evelyn, 1974. Holt closed her eyes, hands trembling. This wasn't just an evidence box. This was a private archive of a man who moved through decades collecting pieces of the people he destroyed. A man whose existence barely touched the official world, yet whose shadow stretched across it like a stain. She looked again at the trunk. Something metallic glinted between the objects. She reached in and pulled out a necklace. Small silver chain, delicate, engraved with an O. Alicia Warren. The desert, patient as always, had hidden everything until someone finally came looking. Holt called the lab immediately, breath staggered, voice tight. The items needed cataloging, analysis, preservation. But she didn't leave yet. She walked through the entire cabin, taking in the meticulousness, the precision, the unsettling calm that clung to the walls. Then she saw it. A set of footprints in the dust. Not fresh, maybe days, maybe weeks, but recent enough to make her skin prickle. Someone had been here not long ago, someone who walked lightly, someone who didn't disturb much, someone who knew how to vanish even while leaving traces behind. She followed the tracks out the back door, into the open desert. They led toward a ridge, then vanished over hard-packed ground. Her radio crackled, dispatch acknowledging the lab request, but Holt didn't respond right away. She stared into the darkness behind the ridge, into the silent expanse that swallowed everything. For the first time, Holt felt it. She wasn't simply uncovering a past crime. She was approaching something still alive, still moving, something that had watched the desert for decades. By the time deputies arrived, she had pieced together the next logical conclusion. If Caleb Rusk was real, if he had fathered the adoptee, if he had drifted through lives leaving ghosts behind, then he wasn't done. Men like him don't stop. Not by choice, not by age, not by time. He had been here, recently, watching the world from his forgotten hideaway. And worst of all, Holt suspected he knew someone was finally looking for him. She gathered the items from the trunk carefully, each one a silent scream frozen in time. The photograph of Evelyn, the IDs, the jewelry, the necklace belonging to Alicia. Every artifact confirmed the pattern. Rusk had marked every victim with a keepsake, preserving them as if claiming ownership. The desert wasn't his hiding place. It was his hunting ground. As dawn began creeping over the horizon, casting pale gold across the sand, Holt realized something chilling. If Rusk had kept trophies for decades, he had kept moving for decades. And if the footprints near the cabin were his, he was still somewhere out here, alive, watching, waiting. The cold case was turning hot, blisteringly hot, and the man behind it had just stepped out of the shadows of history and into the edge of the present. The sun rose slowly over the Nevada desert, lighting the sand in diluted gold, as if trying to soften the brutality hidden beneath it. But nothing felt softened to Detective Holt. The more light stretched across the horizon, the more the truth felt exposed, raw, breathing. She stood beside the abandoned cabin, staring at the footprints vanishing over the hard-packed ridge, and she knew this wasn't just the past crawling back into relevance. This was something alive, something that had waited 25 years only to start moving again. The deputies combed the land around the cabin, dust kicking up around their boots, but the desert had a way of swallowing evidence as quickly as it offered it. Tracks faded without warning. Wind smoothed edges. Distances stretched deceptively. Holt watched their efforts with a tightening jaw, because she understood the real danger wasn't that Rusk's trail had vanished. The danger was that he chose when to leave trails and when to disappear. The evidence trunk was loaded into a cruiser and driven directly to the lab. Meanwhile, Holt stayed behind, reluctant to turn her back on the cabin. It felt like a place that observed her, like walls that had learned to mimic silence. Something in the air felt thick, dense with secrets. She swept the flashlight one more time across the interior, even though the sun was already spilling through the cracked boards. On the edge of the workbench, hidden under a warped metal bracket, she spotted a carved symbol, barely noticeable but deliberate. A single vertical line with 3 horizontal slashes cutting across it, like tally marks interrupted by a spine. She photographed it, unsure of its meaning but certain it wasn't accidental. Men like Caleb Rusk didn't leave scratches. They left messages. When she stepped out of the cabin, the wind shifted, carrying the scent of dust and something older. Holt turned back, eyes narrowing. She didn't believe in ghosts, but she believed in patterns, and she believed in men whose lives resisted logic. The footprints outside the cabin hadn't been deep enough to belong to someone heavy, which meant the man who walked them moved with precision. Rusk wasn't clumsy. Rusk wasn't aged beyond mobility. Rusk was still capable, which meant the timeline was wrong. He didn't vanish in the 1980s or the 1990s. He didn't die somewhere unnoticed. He was still out here, maybe closer than anyone realized. Holt returned to the sheriff's office and spread the evidence photos across a long table. The trophies, the IDs, the necklace belonging to Alicia. Each object felt like a pulse in a larger pattern. Then she pinned the carved symbol from the cabin beside everything else, as if challenging it to reveal its meaning. Hours passed. Deputies moved around her, unaware of how close the case felt to cracking open. Holt couldn't shake the feeling that everything they had discovered so far was only the surface of something deeper. She turned her attention to the adoptee, the boy born in 1975, taken in and taken out of foster homes like a shadow with no roots. If Caleb Rusk was his father, and Daniel Callahan had been a silent influence or accidental mentor, then the adoptee had likely grown up imitating fragments of both men. But why had he disappeared at 8? And who had taken him? Old foster records pointed to a couple named Marlowe, who had cared for the boy briefly, then transferred custody under unclear circumstances. Holt called the only surviving Marlowe sibling, a woman in her 60s now living in Arizona. After a long silence on the phone, the woman admitted something Holt hadn't expected. "We didn't transfer him," she whispered. "He was taken." "By who?" Holt pressed. The woman hesitated, breathing unevenly. "A man who said he was the father. But there was something wrong. He had this way of speaking, like each word was chosen carefully, like he was imitating human behavior instead of living it. I didn't believe him, but he showed documents, IDs. Everything looked real. He told us the boy needed to return to his real family." Holt's grip on the phone tightened. "Did you get his name?" "No. He told us once, but it didn't sound like a real name. I remember thinking it felt borrowed. But he had the boy's eyes. Same color, same emptiness." Holt wrote down every detail as the woman described the man's expression, posture, tone. Then came the final detail. The detail that felt like a blade sliding into the heart of the case. "And when he left," the woman said, her voice cracking, "the boy didn't look scared. He looked relieved, like he was going home." The call ended, but Holt didn't move. She stared at the wall of evidence, at the pattern of disappearances, at the carved symbol, at the Firebird photos, at the spread of objects taken from victims. One truth settled coldly in her chest. Caleb Rusk didn't disappear. He raised someone in his image, a child taught in silence, a child shaped by routine and isolation, a child exposed to violence disguised as survival, a child who grew up learning how to mimic normalcy, how to move unseen, how to watch from the shadows. A child who could now be 48 years old. But where was he? Holt followed the next lead with urgency. She requested access to old highway surveillance from the 1990s, the kind captured on low-resolution cameras near way stations and fuel stops. Most footage had degraded past usefulness, but after hours of reviewing static-filled tapes, she caught a fragment. A dark car pulling into a remote gas stop in 1996. The angle was poor, the clarity worse. But standing beside the vehicle was a man with a rigid posture, hands clasped behind his back, head tilting in the same disturbingly familiar way described by the Foster family. And in the passenger seat, just visible through the windshield, was a boy. Thin, pale, face blank, staring forward as if waiting for the next command. Holt felt the weight of the discovery like a physical impact. The adoptee wasn't missing. He had been molded. She called a forensic sketch artist, describing the 1996 frame, the age progression, the genetic markers. It wasn't perfect. Nothing in the case ever was. But the rendering produced an adult face with sharp cheekbones, narrow eyes, and a jawline reminiscent of the Callahan family. Someone who could blend into a crowd without being noticed, yet carry a presence that felt wrong once you recognized it. Holt pinned the sketch beside the cabin symbol. Something in her gut tightened. Then came the lab call. The unknown DNA recovered from Alicia's cardigan fragment matched older samples from the 1989 and 1996 missing person cases. Same individual, same genetic signature, no record in any database. A predator who moved across decades like a shadow. The lab technician added one more detail, a crucial one. The DNA indicates the subject is still alive, he said. Healthy, likely under 60. The cabin footprints, the trophies, the forensic certainty. It all snapped together. Caleb Rusk wasn't a ghost. He was out there, somewhere between the timelines, likely watching the investigation unfold from a distance. He had taught his son how to vanish, how to choose victims, how to move through the world without leaving a name behind. But the father's pattern was more refined, more precise, more practiced, and that meant something terrifying. The cold case wasn't just about finding Alicia's killer. It was about identifying which man had killed her. The father, or the son. Holt stared at the evidence wall, her breath steady, her mind racing. The desert felt suddenly too quiet, too watchful. If Rusk knew someone had found his cabin, he would adjust. Men like him thrived on control. They didn't flee blindly. They moved with purpose. Her desk phone rang again. Dispatch. Detective, we just received a call from a hiker outside Carson Ridge. He found something you need to see. What? Holt asked sharply. A vehicle. Dispatch said. Old. Black. Looks like it's been wiped down. And, Detective, the caller says he saw footprints leading away from it. Holt didn't speak. She didn't need to. The desert wasn't done. Not even close. She grabbed her keys, her badge, her coat, and ran. Detective Holt reached Carson Ridge before any of the deputies. The desert morning had sharpened into a blinding metallic glare, the kind that made every surface vibrate with heat, even though the air was still cool. She parked her cruiser at the edge of a narrow ravine where the hiker said he'd spotted the vehicle. The silence was harsh, stretched thin like a wire ready to snap. Holt stepped out, boots crunching on gravel, and felt the familiar pulse of adrenaline thrum beneath her ribs. She followed the hiker's directions down the uneven path, 50 yards east, then around a cluster of jagged boulders blackened by decades of sun. And there, half hidden like a relic deliberately placed rather than abandoned, rested the vehicle. A dark shape leaned against the desert floor, its silhouette unmistakable even before she reached it. Holt stopped, breath tight. A black Pontiac Firebird. Not Daniel's, not the one rotting in the salvage yard. This one was whole, restored, maintained, clean, too clean. It wasn't possible, but the desert didn't care about what made sense. It only cared about what surfaced. Holt approached slowly. Every step felt heavy, deliberate. The car looked like it had just rolled off an assembly line, glossy paint intact, chrome edges polished. A ghost resurrected, a memory rebuilt, a message delivered. The windshield had been wiped spotless. The door handles looked untouched, no fingerprints. The tires were free of mud, dust, debris. Unnatural for a car sitting in the middle of nowhere. Someone had parked it here on purpose. She circled the vehicle, the morning sun carving sharp angles across its frame. The interior was empty. No jacket, no tools, no possessions. But on the passenger seat lay a single object, something small, silver, gleaming. A necklace. Holt's breath caught painfully as she bent closer. It wasn't Alicia's. It wasn't from any victim in the evidence trunk. This necklace was new. She retrieved it with gloved hands. A charm dangled from the chain, an engraved letter, M. Her stomach dropped. She checked her jacket, her pockets, her uniform instinctively, as if making sure she hadn't lost anything, before the realization slammed into her. It wasn't hers, but it was made for her. She didn't know how, or when, or why. But she understood the message the moment she saw it. Rusk, whether father or son, wasn't just watching the investigation. He was acknowledging her, leaving her something, marking her the way he had marked every victim before. It wasn't a threat. It was an initiation. Holt closed her eyes, steadying her breath as the desert seemed to lean inward, listening. A rookie deputy arrived in the distance, calling out her name as he jogged down the ravine. His voice felt too loud for the moment, too normal, too out of place among the heavy quiet. She pocketed the necklace carefully, then turned to the deputy. "Secure the area. No one touches that car until the forensic team gets here. And bring drones. We need aerial scans in every direction." The deputy nodded and ran back uphill to call dispatch. Holt stayed by the Firebird, staring at her reflection in its polished surface. The image wavered slightly in the heat, making her look like she was dissolving into the landscape. Something was wrong here. The Firebird was a calling card, a symbol of lineage and method. It wasn't meant to be hidden, it was meant to be found. And if it was meant to be found, then whoever left it wanted the investigation to escalate. She circled the vehicle again, searching for signs the hiker might have overlooked. That was when she noticed the footprints. 2 sets. One set moving toward the ridge, deep enough to suggest a full-grown adult. The second set smaller, lighter, following behind. A father and son. Holt knelt, tracing the impressions with her eyes. The stride length of the first set was measured, exact. The stride of the second set mirrored it precisely, as though the person following had studied the gait, practiced it, imitated it. She photographed both trails, heart hammering. This wasn't just evidence, it was choreography. The son wasn't just following in the father's footsteps metaphorically, he was literally stepping where the father stepped, matching him inch for inch. A shadow learning the shape of a larger shadow. The prints led toward a narrow break in the ridge, a natural corridor winding deep into the desert. Holt followed cautiously, scanning the ground, but as soon as the path turned sharply, the footprints vanished. Clean, erased, deliberate. Someone had brushed them away. Holt stood at the edge of the ridge, staring into a widening expanse of desert. Whoever she was hunting wasn't simply moving through empty land. He was moving with intention, with awareness, with full understanding that the investigation was closing in. She returned to the Firebird and waited as the forensic team arrived in a flurry of dust and equipment. They scanned the interior, the trunk, the undercarriage. Nothing. No hair, no skin cells, no fibers. The car was immaculate, wiped down by someone who knew exactly which parts detectives would test. Holt wasn't surprised. Rusk had been disappearing for decades. Evading forensic traps was probably second nature by now. A technician called her over to the rear bumper, where a thin, almost invisible line had been carved into the paint. The symbol. The same vertical line with 3 horizontal slashes, the same mark etched into the cabin wall. Holt photographed it, jaw clenching. The symbol wasn't a signature, it was a legacy. A mark passed down from father to son, replicated with ritual precision. "What does it mean?" a technician asked her. "It means," Holt said quietly, "he's watching us." Back at the sheriff's office, Holt laid the necklace on her desk under the brightest lamp she could find. She studied it, searching for anything unusual, engraved numbers, hidden compartments, micro-scratches that might reveal a message. Nothing. Just her initial. Her name, Mara, condensed into a single letter. Delicate, intimate, personal. This wasn't just contact, it was acknowledgement. She pulled up the evidence photos from the cabin, trophies, keepsakes, objects tied to victims across decades. The necklace fit the pattern perfectly. But this time, the victim wasn't missing. The victim wasn't dead. The victim was alive. He had chosen her. She locked the office door and opened the case binder again, flipping to every incident that had circulated around Rusk's pattern. One detail stood out. Eyewitnesses often described a man observing from a distance, someone still, quiet, almost blending into the landscape. A man who appeared when searches began. A man who did not intervene, but watched the aftermath of his own violence. A man who wanted his victims seen. A man who wanted investigators to feel his presence. Holt rubbed her forehead, mind firing in every direction. If Rusk was escalating, if he was making himself visible again, then the investigation was entering a dangerous phase. He wasn't fleeing, he wasn't hiding, he was preparing. A knock rattled her office door. "Detective Holt," Deputy Ruiz called. "We have something from the drone footage." Holt opened the door. Ruiz held a tablet, his expression tight. "You need to see this," he said. The footage showed the Firebird from above, the ravine stretching outward. But as Ruiz zoomed out further, Holt saw it. Almost invisible at first, but unmistakable once it came into focus. A figure standing on a distant ridge, tall, still, facing the ravine, watching. The resolution was too low to capture a face. But the outline was sharp, the posture rigid. The figure remained motionless for the entire 14 seconds the drone passed overhead. Then, the moment the drone turned, the figure stepped backward into the shadow of the ridge and vanished. Holt exhaled slowly, pulse thudding in her throat. He hadn't just been watching. He had been waiting. Waiting for her. Waiting for the moment she arrived at the Firebird. Waiting to watch her reaction. The necklace wasn't a threat. It was an invitation. A message carved silently into the desert. "Come find me." And Holt, breath steadying, adrenaline steady as a wire, whispered the only answer that felt true. "Okay, I will." Detective Holt barely slept that night. The desert had a way of invading the mind once you let it in. Its silence, its vastness, its strange sense of being alive. She lay on her back, staring at the ceiling of her small apartment, while the events of the day replayed in relentless loops. The Firebird, the necklace with her initial, the twin sets of footprints, the drone footage capturing a lone figure watching from the ridge. None of it felt symbolic or metaphorical. Every element was intentional, orchestrated with precision by someone who understood fear, surveillance, control. Someone who had been practicing these methods for decades. Holt rose before dawn, fueled not by rest but by purpose, an intensity that felt sharp enough to cut through the fog of exhaustion. She brewed strong coffee, tied her hair back, and reviewed the evidence again under the dim kitchen light, the necklace glinting uncannily beside her notes. If Rusk, or his son, had begun to circle the investigation, then she had to assume every move she made was being watched, not through cameras, not through technology, but through presence, through proximity. Men like him didn't need screens. They needed distance, vantage points, silence. When she stepped outside, the early morning chill hugged the streets, the sheriff's office still half asleep. But Holt wasn't alone. A deputy from the night shift hurried over, holding a sealed envelope. "This was found taped to your office door before sunrise," he said, uneasy. "No cameras caught who left it." Holt took the envelope without flinching, though her heartbeat kicked hard. The front was handwritten, slanted and deliberate. Mara Holt, no return address, no markings. The handwriting too controlled to display emotion. She opened it carefully. Inside was a single photograph, a blurred shot of Holt from behind, taken the day before as she stood in front of the Firebird. Her posture tense, her head tilted, the desert stretching behind her like an open wound. On the bottom corner of the photo, scratched in fine, jagged strokes, was the symbol. The vertical line, 3 horizontal slashes. Her breath slipped out in a slow, steady stream. He'd been closer than the drone footage suggested. A lot closer. She took the photo straight to the evidence room, logged it, scanned it. Then she gathered her team. Ruiz, Kincaid, Torres, and laid the photo on the table under harsh fluorescent light. "He's escalating," Holt said, voice low and steady. "This isn't just taunting. This is communication. Ruiz stared at the symbol. He's marking you. No, Holt corrected. He's integrating me, adding me to the pattern. Kincaid frowned. Why would he want that? Because, Holt answered, predators like him don't hunt randomly. They curate, they choose, they shape the story. And right now, he's shaping it around me. Silence pressed against the walls. Torres broke it. Does he want attention? Is this about power? Holt shook her head. It's about continuity. He's preparing for something. She pointed at the symbol. This mark, whatever it means, is inherited, passed down, and he wants me to understand it. But she didn't. Not yet. So she set out to learn. Holt spent the next hours tracing the symbol through any database she could access. Gang markings, occult symbols, freight codes, native historical signs, military insignia, automotive shorthand. Nothing matched. Nothing even resembled it. The carving on the Firebird and the scratch on the photo were too clean, too personal, too specific. A signature built from a life lived outside systems. As day shifted toward afternoon, Holt received a call from the lab. The technician sounded rattled. We analyzed the dust collected from the Firebird tires, he said. It's not local. What do you mean? It's desert soil, but from a different region. Ridge composition doesn't match Carson Ridge or the salvage yard. It comes from farther east, near the state line. How far? About 80 miles. Holt closed her eyes, visualizing the map. 80 miles east led to an area known for something distinct. Abandoned mines, remote canyons, and stretches of land with no cell service, no patrol coverage, no residents for miles. A perfect place to hide. A perfect place to teach a child how to disappear. A perfect place to watch the world without being seen. She grabbed her jacket, ignoring the deputies calling after her, and drove hard toward the state line. The desert blurred past her windows, its emptiness both oppressive and exhilarating. She reached the region the lab had pinpointed, a series of collapsed mining sites scattered across a long, dead valley. She parked her cruiser and walked. The silence here felt different, heavier, thicker, like it had weight. Loose boards creaked in the wind. Old shafts breathed cold air from the depths of the earth. Rusted machinery leaned like skeletal remains. Everything felt abandoned. But Holt had learned that abandonment could be an illusion. She wound between broken beams and rock piles until she noticed something strange. Scattered boot prints leading toward a half-collapsed tunnel. One set deep, one set light, one set belonging to a grown man. One set belonging to someone mimicking him. Father, son. She drew her weapon and stepped inside. The tunnel smelled of dust and stale air, but something else lingered beneath it. A faint hint of oil, metallic and familiar. Her flashlight carved a thin cone of light through the darkness. The walls were unstable, threatening collapse at the slightest interference. But Holt moved carefully, her breath slow, her footsteps controlled. Then she saw it, a chair, an old wooden chair placed dead center in a hollowed-out chamber. Clean, not a speck of dust, as though someone had wiped it minutes ago. On the seat lay a piece of paper weighed down by a stone. Holt approached, pulse thrumming. She lifted the stone and unfolded the paper. Another photograph, another message. This time, the image wasn't of her. It was Alicia Warren, but not the crime scene photo, not the autopsy photo. This one was taken at the diner, months before she died. She was smiling slightly, carrying a tray, unaware she was being photographed. In the blurred background, almost invisible, stood a tall figure near the window, facing her, watching. A chill tore through Holt. He had been watching Alicia long before the night she died. He had stalked her, selected her, integrated her into the pattern. On the back of the photo, a message written in the same thin, jagged strokes. You see the way I see? Holt's throat tightened. This wasn't admiration. It wasn't taunting. It was recognition. He saw himself in her. An investigator, an observer, someone who studied patterns, someone who traced shadows. He believed they were alike. Holt crushed the photo in her fist, breath shaking. A faint sound echoed deeper in the tunnel. A soft scrape of rock, too deliberate to be natural, too subtle to be accidental. Holt raised her weapon, flashlight trembling slightly as she scanned the darkness. "Rusk!" she called, voice echoing. "Or whoever you are. It's over." Silence. Then a voice, low and smooth and unsettlingly calm, drifted from the dark. "No, Detective Holt. It's finally beginning." Her heart slammed. The voice wasn't close, but it was inside the tunnel. Behind a wall? A side shaft? A ventilation column? She couldn't see him, but he saw her. "He's not with me today." The voice added, "My son. He watches from afar, learns. You'll meet him when the time is right." Holt steadied her aim. "Show yourself." A quiet chuckle. Soft, controlled, chilling. "Not yet. You're not ready. You still think this is about the girl in 1998. It's not. It's about the first one. The one before all of them. The one who taught you to listen to the desert." Holt's spine went cold. He wasn't talking about Alicia. He was talking about Evelyn. Before she could respond, a deep rumble shuddered through the tunnel. Dust fell from the ceiling. Wooden beams groaned. A controlled collapse, triggered from somewhere deeper inside. Holt ran. She sprinted toward the exit as the tunnel behind her folded inward, sending waves of debris crashing in her wake. She burst into the sunlight just as the entrance caved, sealing whatever passage the voice had echoed through. Ruiz and Kincaid arrived minutes later, guns drawn, shouting her name. She staggered upright, dust clouding her breath. "He was here," she gasped. "He talked to me." Ruiz froze. "You saw him?" "No," Holt said, voice trembling with fury. "He saw me." She looked back at the collapsed tunnel, at the dust still settling, at the echo of that unnervingly calm voice. It's finally beginning. The cold case hadn't cracked open. It had detonated, and Holt knew. The father was alive. The son was watching. And both of them had just pulled her into the center of their pattern. The tunnel collapse haunted Detective Holt long after the dust settled. The sound of the beams splintering, the echo of falling earth, the voice drifting through the dark. A voice too calm for a man responsible for decades of disappearances. A voice that didn't rush, didn't threaten, didn't fear. A voice that knew the land better than anyone who policed it. And worst of all, a voice that spoke about the past as if it were a book only he had the right to read. Back at the sheriff's office, Holt stood in front of the evidence wall, body still coated in fine grit from the collapse. Ruiz and Kincaid hovered nearby, shaken. Torres paced the hallway, calling state authorities who didn't know whether to treat this as a serial investigation, a domestic terrorism threat, or some strange mixture of both. But Holt tuned them out. Her eyes locked on the timeline stretching across the wall. Alicia in 1998, the girls in 96, 92, 89, Evelyn Callahan in 74. All threads, all points, all leading back to one figure now confirmed alive. One man who should have been nothing more than a rumor whispered by desert winds. Caleb Rusk, a ghost with a pulse, a predator with a pattern, a teacher who raised a shadow. And now he had spoken directly to her. Holt replayed his words over and over, searching for cracks, hidden meanings, anything that slipped past her in the panic of the collapsing shaft. "He's not with me today. My son watches from afar, learns. You'll meet him when the time is right. It's not about the girl in 1998, it's about the first one. The one who taught you to listen to the desert. Evelyn. Her death was ruled accidental. But what if it wasn't? What if the overdose was staged? What if Rusk had been there? What if she was the earliest piece in his pattern, not just a victim, but the mother of his protégé? Holt felt her pulse hammer as the realization settled. This wasn't a string of unrelated crimes. This was a lineage of violence, a structure, a tradition, a ritual passed down father to son. She grabbed the photograph of Evelyn, the one found in Rusk's trunk, and held it under the lamp, studying the teenage girl's shy smile. Holt imagined her running away from home, vulnerable, isolated, swept into the orbit of a man who understood exactly how to manipulate loneliness. Holt could almost hear Rusk whispering the same calm, hypnotic words he used in the mine tunnel. Evelyn had been the beginning. Maybe the first trophy. Maybe the first experiment. Maybe more. Holt's thoughts shattered when Torres burst into the room, pale, out of breath. "Detective, you need to see this." She followed him to the dispatch monitors. A call had been logged 30 minutes earlier from a truck driver heading north through a corridor of desert highway. He reported a man standing dangerously close to the road, staring at cars as they passed. Not waving, not signaling, just watching. Was he armed? Holt asked. Driver didn't know. Torres said. He didn't stop. Did he describe him? Torres swallowed. Tall, thin, wearing a dark jacket heavy enough for winter. And he said something else. What? He said the man kept tilting his head, like he was listening, but there was no sound. Holt didn't need more. Get units on that stretch now, she ordered. Set up checkpoints in both directions and notify highway patrol. I'm heading there. Ruiz jogged after her. Holt, wait! You're not going alone again. She didn't have time to argue. But she didn't have to. 3 deputies piled into the cruiser with her, and she floored it onto the highway, sirens off. The desert raced past in blurred tan streaks, the horizon shimmering with heat. The coordinates Torres provided led to one of the loneliest strips of road in the state. No gas stations for 40 miles, no homes for 60, just rock formations and sand that swallowed cell signals. As they approached the location, Holt slowed the vehicle. The desert around them rippled under the late afternoon sun, stretching endlessly. The road hummed beneath the tires. Nothing moved. What if he's gone? Ruiz asked quietly. No, Holt said. He wants to be seen. They scanned the roadside, empty, silent. Then Kincaid pointed at a narrow offshoot road, little more than a trail of packed dirt. There, a figure stood at the end of it, motionless. Holt's breath caught. Tall, thin, dark jacket, head tilted ever so slightly, like a man listening for something far away. They stopped the cruiser 50 yards back. Holt stepped out first, weapon holstered for now, palms open. The air buzzed with that strange electric stillness that seemed to follow every trace of Rusk. Caleb Rusk! She called out. Or whoever you are, you need to show your hands. The figure didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't respond. Holt approached slowly, boots crunching on gravel. 20 yards. 15. 10. Then she froze. Something was wrong with his posture. Too stiff, too unnatural, too placed. She stepped closer, eyes narrowing. It wasn't a man. It was a mannequin, a full-sized fabric mannequin dressed in a dark jacket, positioned carefully to mimic a human silhouette. The head tilted in the exact way the truck driver had described. It stood upright only because it had been anchored into the ground with a spike through its foot. Ruiz cursed behind her. What the hell is this? Holt circled the mannequin. That was when she noticed a small recorder taped to the back of its neck. She pressed play. Static, then a voice, smooth, calm, his voice. You listen well, Detective Holt, but you listen too late. More static, then, go home. Your part comes later. The recording clicked off. Holt's blood went cold. She yanked the jacket open and found a folded map pinned to the mannequin's chest with a single needle. A hand-drawn X sat in the lower corner, far south, near an abandoned rail depot. A trap or an invitation or both. She unfolded it fully and gasped. 3 symbols were drawn in black ink. Vertical line. 3 horizontal slashes, each placed at different desert locations. One was the cabin, one was the mine, the third was somewhere she hadn't been yet. But near the third symbol, 3 small circles were drawn beneath it, as if marking steps or layers or escalating stages. Ruiz looked over her shoulder. What does that mean? Holt clenched her jaw. It means he's not finished. On the back of the map, a handwritten message waited in the same jagged script. The son chooses the next. The father watches. The desert decides. Holt felt her stomach twist. The son chooses. Alicia hadn't been chosen by Caleb. She had been chosen by the son, and the father had supervised. She turned toward the horizon, scanning the empty desert. He's not trying to lose us, she murmured. He's preparing us. For what? Ruiz asked. Holt didn't answer, not because she didn't know, but because saying it out loud made it real. He wasn't grooming a successor. He was presenting one. As they prepared to leave, Holt noticed something scratched into the dirt beside the mannequin's foot. Fresh marks. Deliberate. A single letter. M. Her initial. Ruiz swore again. He's obsessed with you. No, Holt said softly. He's selecting me. She knelt, touching the dirt lightly. And this, she whispered, is him telling me I don't get to choose whether I'm part of this story. She stood, dusted her hands clean, and stared at the vast desert ahead. The sun was out there. The father was following the investigation, and both of them were drawing her deeper into a pattern older than she realized. The desert didn't hide the truth. It waited for you to walk far enough to deserve it. Night fell hard across the desert, a dense curtain swallowing every contour of the land until the world shrank to a narrow tunnel of shadows. Detective Holt drove back from the mannequin site with the map spread open across her passenger seat, headlights bouncing across an emptiness that looked too wide to hold any answers. Yet she knew the truth sat somewhere in that darkness. Alive, moving, watching. The father, the son. Two silhouettes drifting across a landscape they treated like a private stage. The map had changed everything. 3 symbols, 3 phases, 3 places where Rusk's pattern had unfolded across decades. One discovered, his cabin. One destroyed, the mine tunnel. The third still unvisited, marked at the southern edge of the desert near an abandoned rail depot. The circles beneath the symbol weren't decorative. They were steps, stages, progressions, a ritual unfolding in sequence, and she was now part of that sequence. Back at the sheriff's office, Holt studied the map under bright fluorescent light as deputies hovered outside like nervous shadows. The room felt smaller than usual, too still, as if waiting for her next move. She ran a finger over the rough ink circles, trying to decipher their meaning. The first circle aligned with the cabin, where she had found his trophies. The second matched the mine, where he had spoken to her for the first time. And the third... A knock interrupted her thoughts. Ruiz entered, holding a tablet with drone footage from that afternoon. Holt gestured him in. Show me. Ruiz tapped the screen. Aerial footage of Carson Ridge appeared again, then zoomed out across miles of desert. The drone's altitude climbed slowly, revealing a sweeping view. Fast forward, Holt said. Ruiz scrubbed the timeline until the moment before sunset. The drone passed over a flat plateau near the mannequin site. Holt leaned closer. Something flickered in the lower corner. A shape. A shift. Pause. Holt ordered. Ruiz froze the frame. A second figure, far away, too distant to see clearly. But not the mannequin. Not stationary. A person. Standing on a ridge, barely visible in the dying light. Watching the road where they had arrived. Not the father. She knew his presence now, the heavy stillness that followed him. This silhouette stood differently. Shoulders tense, posture youthful, a shape formed by imitation, not original instinct. The son. He had watched everything from a distance. You see it? Ruiz whispered. Holt nodded. He's learning the choreography. Torres entered behind them with a new report. Detective Holt, Highway Patrol just called. They found another symbol. Holt straightened sharply. Where? Under a bridge near Redwater Crossing. Freshly carved. Same pattern. The map flashed through Holt's mind. The circles, the lines, the sequence. That's between the mannequin site and the depot, she said. Exactly. A chill cracked through her spine. They weren't ahead. They were already in the middle of what he wanted them to follow. Gear up, Holt ordered. We're going now. Ruiz hesitated. You think it's safe? No, Holt said, but it's necessary. They caravanned out with 2 cruisers, headlights cutting wedges of light through a thickening night. Redwater Crossing was a skeletal stretch of dry riverbed beneath an old concrete bridge, long abandoned by city engineers. Graffiti coated the pillars, names and dates layered over decades of passing teenagers and bored drifters. But one marking stood alone near the center pillar. Fresh, clean, carved with precision. The symbol, vertical line, 3 horizontal slashes. Holt approached slowly, scanning every shadow. The moon hung thin, like a blade slicing through the sky. Something about the air felt wrong, cooler than the surrounding desert, almost damp. Ruiz shone his flashlight on the ground beneath the pillar. "What's that?" he asked. Holt knelt. A small pile of stones arranged in a perfect circle. At the center of the circle, a scrap of paper weighed down by a rusted bolt. She picked it up. Another photo. This one of the adoptee, the boy from the 1996 gas station footage. Now older, maybe in his teens. Standing beside a different vehicle. Not the Firebird. A battered pickup truck missing a door. His posture matched the older drone's. Rigid, unnatural, body angled as if awaiting instruction. But the most chilling detail was his eyes, sharp, alert, watching the camera directly as if aware of being recorded. On the back of the photo, 4 words. "He learned from you." Holt felt her blood churn. She didn't know how or what Rusk meant, but the message hit with unnerving precision. She wasn't just chasing a pattern, she was being compared to it. Then a voice cut through the darkness. Kincaid, yelling from the dry riverbed. "Detective, over here!" They ran toward him. He pointed his flashlight at a mound of dirt near the bank. Something stuck out of it. Fabric. Holt knelt and brushed away sand until the shape emerged. An old duffel bag, zipped shut, edges stiff from age. A faint odor seeped from it. Metallic, sour, unmistakably wrong. Ruiz stepped back. "Jesus!" Holt unzipped the bag. Inside lay clothing items, women's clothing, a red sweater, a torn denim jacket, a faded blue sundress, all neatly folded, all old. But beneath them lay something far worse. A journal. She lifted it gently. The cover cracked. Pages inside were yellowed, water-damaged. She flipped through, handwriting cramped and chaotic, lines from a girl describing fear, confusion, isolation. Mentions of a man who waits outside the window, of footsteps she heard every night, of a boy who stares without blinking, of a desert that never sleeps. Torres whispered, "Who wrote that?" Holt scanned the final intact page. The signature was smeared, but the first name was clear. Marlene. Ruiz looked up. "That's the girl from the 1989 disappearance." Holt's breath shook. The bag wasn't a trap. It was evidence he wanted them to find. Another piece in the pattern. Another victim added to the timeline. Torres pointed at the far end of the riverbed. "Footprints!" 2 sets again. 1 large, 1 smaller. And then another set. Smaller still. Holt froze. "A 3rd footprint?" Ruiz followed her gaze. "Is that—" Holt's voice cracked. "A child!" Tiny impressions. Barefoot. Light. Recent. The father wasn't just teaching a son. He was raising another. A 3rd generation. Holt staggered backward, heart clenching. This wasn't a cycle. It was a dynasty. A bloodline shaped for hidden violence, groomed for the desert. And they weren't hiding it anymore. They were announcing it. A low rumble echoed from the eastern ridge. The deputies swung their flashlights toward it, but the sound faded instantly, like someone dragging a heavy object over stone before lifting it into silence. Holt scanned the horizon. Nothing moved, but the message was unmistakable. He wanted them to hear him, but not find him. She looked back at the bridge pillar, at the scratched mark,